Imagine discovering that you've just completely lost your legal right to vote on the future of your own home.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a nightmare scenario.
Right. And not because you broke a rule or, forgot to pay your common fees, but simply because the person you pay to manage your building was basically too afraid of a privacy law to update a spreadsheet.
It sounds absurd, but honestly, it happens far more often than people realize.
It really does. You try to speak up at a meeting, and you are literally told you don't officially exist in the building's registry. Your voice in the place you sleep every night has just been completely silenced by a bureaucratic shrug.
And that's exactly why millions of us who live in condominiums need to pay attention.
Yeah.
I mean, we essentially buy into these massive vertical neighborhoods, right?
Exactly.
Sign the mortgage, we move all our furniture in, but very few of us actually understand the hidden mechanics operating just beneath the surface of the lobby. We just, assume there's a functional system in place.
And that assumption is exactly what we are going to tear down and rebuild today. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission for today's dive into the source material is straightforward. We want to empower you, the listener.
Absolutely.
Whether you are a condo co-owner, a resident renting a unit, or just someone fascinated by, the psychology of everyday governance, our focus is to give you absolute clarity. We want to equip you with a really comprehensive understanding of your rights, the often bizarre dynamics of condo management, and what true transparency actually looks like in practice.
Right, because the laws and regulations are supposed to protect you, not work against you.
Sure.
To do that, we are putting a giant magnifying glass on one specific, highly detailed, real-world interaction today.
Yeah, this source material is wild.
It really is. We are analyzing a recorded conversation that took place on the afternoon of July 9, 2026, at exactly 14.1 Keene. This happened in the management office of the Riverhaven condo.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So on one side of the desk, you have a highly proactive condo co-owner, and on the other side, the building manager, who we will refer to as Gift.
What I find so compelling about this specific stack of sources is how a completely mundane administrative question just acts as a catalyst.
Oh, completely. It escalates so fast.
It really does. It starts with the co-owner walking in to ask about a delayed update to a document. In the Thai legal context, this is known as the TR-14 document, which is basically the master co-owner registry.
Right.
But within minutes, this routine inquiry just cracks open the entire philosophy of building management. It turns into a masterclass on the vast canyon between doing the bare legal minimum and exercising true good governance.
Because the TR-14 registry isn't just a phone book. I mean, it is the absolute foundation of a condominium's legal and financial operations.
It dictates everything, right?
Everything. It dictates who gets billed for common fees, who is legally notified of general assemblies, and crucially, who holds the voting rights to make structural changes to the juristic person.
And just to clarify for everyone, the juristic person is the legal entity that is the condo itself.
Exactly. So the co-owner goes to the office because this database is dangerously out of date.
Like, seriously out of date. Rooms have been sold, owners have died, properties have been transferred, but the official list doesn't reflect reality at all.
Yeah. And Manager Gift explains that she did actually go to the local district office to get the updated civil registration data.
Okay, so she cried.
She did. But the government clerk told her that because of the new guidelines under the Personal Data Protection Act, the PDPA, they can no longer extract that data for her.
Ah, the PDPA.
Yep. The government office said no, so Manager Gift basically went back to her office and just stopped trying.
Which brings us to the first major roadblock in this ecosystem. Because, on the surface, if a government official says, the privacy law prevents me from giving you this, well, it sounds like an ironclad excuse.
It does sound convincing.
Let me play devil's advocate here for a second, though. The PDPA carries massive financial and criminal penalties for data breaches.
Oh, huge penalties.
If I'm making a standard building manager's salary, I am certainly not risking my neck, or a $1 million baht fine, to force a government clerk to hand over a list of names. Isn't she completely justified in backing off? Exactly, what is she supposed to do when the law literally says no?
Well, your hesitation makes total sense if you view the law as a single, impenetrable brick wall.
Right.
But the reality of legal administration is that it's an overlapping web of frameworks. The manager's conclusion that it cannot be done is administratively incomplete.
Okay, how so?
Because the PDPA is a major piece of legislation, absolutely, but it does not erase the Civil Registration Act. It doesn't erase the specific regulations of the Department of Provincial Administration.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it definitely doesn't nullify overarching government disclosure rules that actually allow juristic persons to maintain their legal registries.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the clerk was wrong.
Not necessarily wrong, but likely applying a really broad blanket policy just to avoid personal liability, which happens all the time in government offices.
Sure, nobody wants to get sued.
Exactly. But the core problem identified in the source material isn't the district office's refusal. That refusal is just friction. The actual problem is the manager's immediate surrender to that friction.
Yeah, she just gave up.
A professional manager has a fiduciary duty to administer the juristic person's affairs in the best interest of all co-owners. You don't just take a verbal no from a clerk and let the building's entire legal foundation rot.
It's like asking a security guard if you can go through the front door, getting a no, and deciding to just live on the street instead of, I don't know, asking if there's a side door of a visitor pass or a manager to speak to.
That is a perfect analogy. You have to look for the side door.
So walk me through the mechanics of that. When the clerk says sorry, PDPA says no, what is the actual mechanical next step a professional should take in that moment?
First, you require a paper trail. Always. A manager shouldn't just accept a verbal rejection for a legally mandated duty. They need to formally request the data in writing and force the district office to reply in writing, citing the exact legal statute they are using to deny the request.
Get on the record.
Exactly.
Here.
Once you have a written denial, then you can escalate it. You ask, under what specific legal exception can this be granted? For instance, they could have explored power of attorney options.
How would that work?
Well, the management office could draft a document for co-owners to sign, legally authorizing the juristic person to pull their data. That bypasses the clerk's PDPA concerns entirely. Or the manager could immediately take that written denial to their internal legal counsel at the management company to file an appeal.
But according to the transcript, Gift admits she didn't do any of that.
None of it.
No written request, no follow-up on alternative legal pathways. She didn't even consult with the Condo committee to formulate a workaround. She just folded at the first sign of resistance.
Which leaves the condo incredibly vulnerable. If the registry isn't updated, the ripple effects are severe. I mean, invoices go to dead people. New owners don't get billed, so they accumulate massive penalty fees without even knowing it. And when the annual general meeting happens, the quorum might not be met because the invitations went to the wrong addresses.
Wow.
The entire microdemocracy basically grinds to a halt, all because of a paperwork error that no one fought to fix.
And because she gave up on the official government route, the manager decided to improvise. She put out an announcement asking all residents to update their own data by clicking a link and filling out a Google form.
Oh, a classic, fundamentally flawed workaround.
Yeah, and the co-owner, who clearly pays a lot of attention, didn't just blindly type their ID number into this form. Prior to this July 9th meeting, the co-owner had actually submitted a formal written letter to the manager raising serious security concerns about using a standard Google form for highly sensitive civil registry data.
I mean, any corporate compliance officer would look at a random Google form for ID cards and start sweating profusely.
Right. The co-owner wasn't just being difficult. They were asking vital risk management questions. In the letter, they asked some really smart things.
Like what?
They asked, who is the data controller here? Who is the data processor? Where is this information physically being stored? What are the access protocols? And if this form gets hacked, who takes the legal liability?
Let's actually break down why those questions are so critical. Because the distinction between a data controller and a data processor is exactly where the legal liability lives.
Okay, explain that for us.
In this scenario, the juristic person, meaning the collective body of all co-owners, is likely the data controller. They're the ones deciding why and how this personal data is being collected. Google, or perhaps the management company, depending on how their IT is set up, is merely the data processor.
Meaning they just host the data.
Exactly. They just provide the servers.
So if there's a breach, the co-owners are the ones on the hook.
Potentially, yes. If the manager is using a free, unencrypted personal Gmail account to collect the ID cards and title deeds of hundreds of people, and that account gets compromised.
Which happens all the time.
Right. The juristic person could be hit with catastrophic PDPA fines for gross negligence in their data security practices. The co-owner is essentially performing a free, high-level risk assessment for the building by asking these questions.
But here is the most infuriating part of the transcript for me. The manager never replied to the letter.
Not a single word.
Over a month passed. The co-owner had explicitly written a 7 to 14-day window into the letter for a response. They even went to the admin staff in person and said, look, if the manager is swamped or if she needs more time to consult the corporate legal team, just communicate that to me. I'm happy to grant an extension. They offered total flexibility.
And they received absolute silence. It's wild.
I have to ask about the legality of this. If I'm a co-owner paying my common fees every month, I am essentially the employer, right?
Correct.
If I send my property manager a formal written inquiry about building security, isn't ghosting me illegal? Like, can you just ignore the person paying your salary?
This is where we really have to separate a statutory violation from a failure of governance. If we look strictly at the text of the Condominium Act, there is no explicit clause that says a building manager must reply to a co-owner's letter within 14 days.
Really? Nothing.
Nothing explicit like that. Unless the specific bylaws of Riverhaven Condo have that time frame written into them, the manager didn't technically commit a crime by ignoring the letter.
That is incredibly frustrating, so she can just use silence as a defense mechanism indefinitely, just hide under her desk.
She can try, but it introduces a crucial concept of good governance, which is heavily emphasized in the source analysis.
Legal compliance versus good governance.
Exactly. Legal compliance is the floor. It just keeps you out of jail. Good governance is the ceiling. It's about transparency, accountability, and maintaining trust. Ignoring a letter might not put you in handcuffs, but chronic silence absolutely destroys the social contract of the community.
The source material actually analyzes how a condo registrar would view this ghosting, doesn't it?
It does, and this is vital for listeners to understand. The condo registrar is the local government authority that oversees these juristic persons. Okay, if you take this grievance to the registrar, they aren't going to look for a criminal statute to throw the book at the manager. They evaluate the systemic operational health of the building.
How does that actually work in practice? If a registrar gets a complaint about ignored letters, what do they actually do?
They look for patterns. If a manager consistently ignores co-owners, refuses to answer valid risk assessment questions, and essentially governs through opacity, the registrar logs this as evidence of systemic mismanagement.
Ah, so it builds a case.
Right. They might not intervene immediately over one ignored letter, but this documented pattern of behavior can absolutely be weaponized later.
How so?
It can be used by the co-owners at a general assembly as factual grounds for terminating the management company's contract without penalty. From a public administration standpoint, a condo is supposed to operate with standard stakeholder communication principles. You acknowledge receipt of a letter, you provide a timeline for an answer, and you deliver that answer.
It's just baseline professionalism. But what blows my mind is that during this July meeting, when the co-owner finally corners her about the registry face-to-face, Manager Gift reveals she actually did consult the management company's lawyer about the district office problem.
Oh, yes. The plot thickens significantly here.
Right. The manager says the lawyer told her that since early 2026, there are new, stricter practices in place. Supposedly, the district offices are heavily restricting data extraction, and now only lawyers can pull this registry data.
Right.
Furthermore, the lawyer claimed they usually only do this when there is active litigation or a formal dispute, not just for routine database updates.
And you have to notice how the manager interprets that specific legal advice.
She sees it as a total dead end.
Yeah.
Her logic is entirely defeatist. She thinks the lawyer says this tool is only for lawsuits, we aren't suing anyone right now, therefore we can't use the lawyer and we can't get the data.
Yeah, she just closes the book.
But the co-owner hears that exact same sentence and has a wildly different reaction. The co-owner sees a map, not a wall.
The co-owner asks the logical follow-up question.
Right. The co-owner says, wait, if the lawyer can mechanically extract the data, why don't we just authorize the lawyer to do it on our behalf? If they need a reason, let's have the lawyer find out exactly what administrative reasons are acceptable to the district office and file the paperwork under that provision.
It is such a profound clash of administrative philosophies. You have the mindset of constraint versus the mindset of navigation.
Oh, I like that phrasing.
The manager looks at the rules and says, the rule says X, so I must stop at X. But the co-owner looks at the rules and says, the rule requires X, so how do we fulfill the conditions of X to achieve our goal?
It really exposes a massive lack of critical thinking on the manager's part. She basically views the lawyer as a fire extinguisher.
Huh.
You know, you only break the glass if the building is actively burning in a lawsuit.
That's a great way to look at it.
And the co-owner is saying, our legal foundation is rotting, that is a fire, let's use the tool we already pay for.
And because the manager operated from that mindset of constraint, Her fallback plan, the Google Form self-reporting strategy, was disastrously naive.
Yeah, that form.
The manager mentioned her superior, the Roberts, advised her to just ask the owners to self-report. But if we look at the mechanics of a modern condominium ecosystem, relying on self-reporting to maintain a legally binding registry is a dereliction of duty.
Okay, I want to push back a little here because self-reporting sounds efficient, all right? Every time I log into my bank app, it asks me to confirm my phone number or email. Why is it so terrible for a condo to just ask people to update their own files?
Well, because your bank has leverage over you. They can freeze your funds if you don't comply.
Oh, that's true.
A condo manager asking nicely via a line group has zero leverage. Think about the demographics of a 500-unit building.
Yeah.
You have absentee owners who live overseas and literally never read the condo's emails.
Right.
You have investors who buy 5 units, rent them out, and have zero interest in the daily administration. You have elderly residents who simply don't use Google Forms. And you have people who just ignore mass announcements entirely.
So you're saying a 100% voluntary system will mathematically never reach 100% compliance?
Never. I mean, you might get 40% of the really diligent residents to fill it out, but the other 60% of your registry remains permanently broken.
Which brings us right back to the start.
Exactly. And as we discussed, when the registry is broken, invoices are invalid, meeting quorums are challenged, and the legal operation of the building just decays. The core issue here isn't that the manager hit a wall at the district office.
Right.
It's the adequacy of her effort after hitting that wall. She stopped at the first sign of friction, and in property management, that is just unacceptable.
Well, that friction is about to heat up because the conversation in the management office shifts away from Google Forms and moves into what is probably the most sensitive topic in any microdemocracy, the money.
Oh, always.
Specifically, they start arguing about an upcoming general meeting where the committee plans to propose a massive increase in the common area fee.
Which is the lifeblood of the juristic person.
The taxes of the building, essentially. Now, the co-owner is deeply concerned about this upcoming meeting. But what's really interesting here is that the co-owner isn't necessarily arguing that the fee shouldn't go up at all. They're angry about how the meeting agenda was drafted.
The phrasing matters.
Right. The document sent out to residents already explicitly lists a proposed new rate. It says 40 baht per square meter.
Yeah, and Manager Gift defends printing that number, correct?
Yes, she says, it's just a sample number. We put it there so residents aren't confused. If we leave it blank, people will call the office asking how much it might go up, and I won't have an answer for them.
That defense ignores a massive psychological and procedural danger. By printing 40 baht on the official agenda, the manager and the committee have fundamentally anchored the negotiation.
Anchoring. Okay, I know this from sales. If you walk onto a car lot and the sticker says $30,000, every negotiation revolves around that number, even if the car is really only worth $20,000.
Precisely. Once 40 baht is in print on an official document, it becomes the default reality in the minds of the voters.
Even if it says sample.
Even if it's labeled a sample. Human psychology dictates that residents will immediately start mentally budgeting for 40 baht. But procedurally, the co-owner is absolutely right to be furious about this. Setting the common fee rate is not the manager's job. It is not even the condo committee's job.
Wait, who actually holds that power then?
It is the sole exclusive power of the General Assembly, meaning the collective vote of the co-owners.
Wow.
By printing a specific number beforehand, the committee creates this illusion that the decision has already been mathematically calculated and finalized by the authorities, and the owners are basically just showing up to rubber stamp it. It suppresses organic debate.
The co-owner argues that the agenda should state the need for the increase, like the financial crisis the building is facing, but leave the actual rate completely blank to be debated and decided by the owners on the floor.
Which is the democratic way to do it.
Exactly, but the manager drops a financial statistic during this argument that completely changed my perspective on the stakes here.
The deficit.
Yes. She reveals that the condo currently has over 20 million baht in annual expenses, but they are only collecting about 10 million baht in income from the current fees.
A structural deficit of 10 million baht is existential. I mean, they are burning through their sinking fund and cash reserves at an alarming rate.
But wait, how does a building even get to a point where expenses are double the income? How do you mathematically fail that badly without noticing?
Well, it happens slowly and then all at once. Usually developers set the initial common fees artificially low, to attract buyers when the building is new and still under warranty.
Okay, that makes sense.
Fast forward 10 years, though.
Yeah.
The elevators need major mechanical overhauls, the water pumps start failing, inflation drives up the cost of security and cleaning staff, and insurance premiums spike.
It all adds up.
Right. Meanwhile, the fees haven't been raised in a decade because it's politically unpopular to raise taxes. Combine that with the percentage of owners who default on their payments, and suddenly you are bleeding 10 million baht a year just to keep the lights on in the hallways.
Okay, so with a massive, terrifying deficit like that, why is the co-owner fighting the manager on the meeting details? I mean, if the ship is sinking, shouldn't they just rush the vote, raise the fees to 40 baht, and save the building?
Because the co-owner understands that in a micro-democracy, how you pass a law is just as important as why you pass it. The core grievance here is information timing.
Information timing.
Yes. The co-owner asks a brilliant question. If this 20 million baht expense breakdown and this 10 million baht shortfall are so critical to our survival, why haven't they been shared with the residents in advance?
Right. Why isn't this data being blasted out on the condo's line groups? Why isn't there a giant pie chart in the elevators weeks ahead of time?
Manager Gift's response is typical of passive compliance. She says that all the financial spreadsheets are in the meeting packet, and she plans to project them on a screen and explain it all in detail during the General Assembly.
Oh my gosh. Anyone who has ever attended a condo meeting knows that is a recipe for absolute chaos.
Full chaos.
You have dozens of agenda items. It's a Sunday afternoon. People are exhausted. They are looking at their phones. They just want to go back to their rooms. If you dump complex multi-million baht financial spreadsheets on them at hour 3 of a meeting, you are deliberately preventing informed debate.
It creates an engineered pressure cooker.
Yeah.
The co-owner points out exactly how this plays out in reality.
Let's hear it.
The meeting reaches the financial agenda. The manager drops the terrifying 10 million baht deficit bombshell on the crowd. The residents are shocked and confused. A few detail-oriented people try to ask deep questions about the elevator maintenance contracts or, the staff overtime budget. But what happens?
The chairman of the meeting taps the microphone and says, "Sorry, folks. We have the room booked for only another 30 minutes. We need to move to a vote."
Yes. It forces a rushed vote based entirely on panic. The residents feel they have a gun to their heads. Vote for the 40 baht hike, or the electricity gets cut off next month.
That's awful.
Good governance dictates that you must distribute granular financial data weeks in advance. You give the co-owners time to digest the spreadsheets, consult with accountants or engineers who live in the building, formulate intelligent questions, and arrive at the meeting prepared to engage as educated voters.
If the owners are kept in the dark until the final second, the democratic system is just a theater performance. It's fake.
Exactly.
And this tension over how to treat the residents transitions beautifully into a deeper philosophical debate in the source material. It basically begs the question, who does the manager actually think she works for?
The transcript reveals a fundamental disconnect in the manager's understanding of her own role. Throughout the conversation, Gift keeps referencing her superiors at the external management company. Or she references the directives of the condo committee. She acts entirely as a middleman, just an order taker.
But the co-owner has a completely different philosophy of what a professional property manager should be. The co-owner tells her that a real manager doesn't just pass a licensing exam and memorize the Condominium Act.
Right.
A true professional studies the building's specific history. They read the backlog of past resident complaints. They reach out to former building managers and previous committee members to understand the historical context of the property so they can anticipate problems instead of just reacting to them.
It's the difference between being a passive administrator and an active community leader. The manager defends herself by pointing out she has studied the law with instructors. She knows the rules.
But book smarts don't fix a broken community. What really fascinates me is the co-owner's personal dedication to this. During the chat, the co-owner mentions that they are actively creating media, like writing articles and recording audio summaries specifically to educate their neighbors.
That takes a lot of time.
It does. And they aren't doing this to organize a protest against the fee hike. They're doing it because they realize most people living in the building have never read the Condominium Act and have no idea how their own home is governed.
They are single-handedly taking on the burden of civic education. And they are doing it because they understand the triad of condo power way better than the manager does.
Ooh, let's break down that triad because I think a lot of people, including managers, get confused about who holds the real authority here.
It's essential to visualize the hierarchy. First, you have the management company. This is an external, for-profit corporate entity. They are a service provider hired on a temporary contract.
Okay, got it.
Second, you have the Condo Committee. These are elected representatives, fellow co-owners, who volunteer to set broad operational policies and oversee the management company's performance.
So the committee is kind of like the board of directors, and the management company is the hired CEO.
Roughly, yes. But the third, an absolute supreme entity, is the collective body of co-owners acting through the General Assembly.
The voters.
Yes. They are the ultimate power holders. They are the sovereigns of the juristic person. The money that pays the management company's monthly invoice comes entirely from the common fees paid by those co-owners.
Which means the manager shouldn't just be looking up at her corporate boss or the committee chairman.
She needs to be looking directly at the residents. The manager must balance the policy directives of the committee with the fundamental statutory rights of the co-owners. If you act merely as a blind order taker for the committee, while ignoring the written inquiries of the people funding your salary, you are failing the core mandate of professional management. The co-owner makes this very clear to Gift. If you maintain this pattern of hiding information and dodging communication, eventually the owners will question the value of the management contract itself.
They won't just vote against the fee hike, they will vote to fire your company.
Exactly. It's not a threat. It's just the economic reality of poor service.
If the waiter ignores you, you don't go back to the restaurant.
Right.
And speaking of economics, this brings us to the final major conflict of their meeting the audit. Because nothing tests the transparency of a building manager quite like asking to see the actual receipts.
Oh, this circles back to the registry update, but with a really crucial financial twist.
Right. So earlier, the manager claimed they couldn't update the whole registry because of the PDPA. Towards the end of this hour-long meeting, she proposes a compromise. She says, okay, to save the building money, we won't try to update all 500 rooms. We will only do targeted updates.
Okay, that makes sense.
She says, we'll cross-reference the data and only officially update the registry for rooms that have glaring errors or name mismatches. She estimates that processing these specific rooms at the district office will cost the building about 200 bahts per room in government fees.
Purely from a triage and budgeting perspective, that is actually a highly reasonable operational strategy.
And the co-owner completely agrees. The co-owner says, I fully support being thrifty with our common funds, but, and this is a massive but, if you are going to spend 200 baht of our communal money per room, I demand to see the paper trail.
As they should.
The co-owner wants to see the receipts, the government stamps, and the total amounts paid to the district office, just to ensure the funds are actually being spent properly and the updates are genuinely happening.
This is a standard fundamental right of any co-owner. You have the right to audit the expenditure of common funds.
But Manager Gift flat out refuses to show the documents. And what shield does she raise to block the audit?
Let me guess. The PDPA? Once again.
Yes. She claims that the official receipts and the government documents contain the names and ID numbers of other room owners. Therefore, under the privacy laws, she cannot legally show those documents to this co-owner.
Which represents a complete structural misunderstanding of how privacy law interacts with financial transparency.
I have a way to visualize this. Imagine the CIA is ordered to release a 50-page declassified document about a historical event.
Okay.
But on page 4, there is the name of one active undercover agent. The CIA doesn't say, well, privacy laws prevent us from releasing this, so we are going to burn the entire 50-page document and lock it in a vault forever. What do? They take a thick black marker, they redact the single agent's name, and they release the rest of the document to the public.
That is an excellent way to understand the mechanics of it. The existence of sensitive data on a document does not classify the entire document as an impenetrable secret. And this is exactly where the co-owner proves they understand the law better than the manager. The co-owner explicitly identifies the legal middle ground. They tell the manager, I do not want my neighbor's ID numbers. I don't care about their personal details. I want to see the official government stamp, the date, and the total amount of money paid.
Show me the math, not the man.
Exactly. PDPA says no has basically become the lazy defense mechanism of modern administration. The correct legal procedure in this scenario is redaction.
Redaction.
Yes. The manager should take a photocopy of the receipt, use a marker to mask the personal data, literally blacking out the names and ID numbers of the other owners, and present the masked document for audit.
It's that simple.
It is. This fulfills the strict requirements of the PDPA by protecting personal data while simultaneously fulfilling the overriding fiduciary obligation of financial transparency to the co-owners.
But the manager stubbornly wouldn't budge. She insisted she could only show a basic summary receipt, but wouldn't show the detailed documents proving which rooms were actually processed, just hiding behind the privacy excuse. The co-owner basically wrapped up the meeting by saying, "Fine, I'm taking this to my legal team to review," because they knew the manager's interpretation was dangerously broad.
It perfectly highlights the modern tension in property management balancing individual privacy against collective transparency. A competent manager knows how to navigate that tension using basic administrative tools like redaction. An incompetent manager uses privacy as a blanket excuse to enforce total opacity and avoid accountability.
This single hour on a July afternoon is just incredibly dense with lessons. And what I love about the source material is that it doesn't just leave us with this frustrating stalemate. The author actually concludes by putting this exact scenario through a brilliant analytical exercise.
Oh, this is the best part.
They evaluate manager Gift's behavior through 3 distinct professional lenses: a lawyer, a condo registrar, and a district officer.
This multi-perspective synthesis is crucial because it shows us the massive difference between legal theory and operational reality. Let's start with the lawyer's view.
Okay, if I am the co-owner and I take the recording of this frustrating conversation to a high-powered property lawyer, what is their verdict? Can I sue the manager?
The lawyer looks at this strictly through the penal codes and civil liability clauses of the Condominium Act, and the lawyer's likely verdict is going to be pretty disappointing. The manager probably didn't overtly break a statute that you can successfully sue over based on this conversation alone.
Wait, seriously, after she ignored a formal letter regarding security risks and refused to show financial receipts, she's legally untouchable.
Well, she isn't untouchable, but the burden of proof in a court of law is incredibly high. To successfully sue a manager under something like Section 54 of the Act, or for a breach of fiduciary duty, you need to prove malicious intent or gross negligence that cause quantifiable direct financial harm to the juristic person.
Ah, I see.
A frustrating conversation where a manager misunderstands the PDPA is just hearsay and incompetence. It's not malice.
So what does a lawyer actually need to build a real case against a bad manager?
They need a bulletproof paper trail. A verbal refusal to show a receipt isn't enough. You need to submit a formal written demand for the redacted receipts sent via registered mail.
Okay.
You need the official minutes of the General Assembly proving she withheld financial data against the Assembly's wishes. You need documented committee resolutions proving she acted in direct defiance of orders. Without that paper trail, a lawyer will tell you that a bad attitude just isn't a crime.
Okay, so the courtroom route is difficult. What about the condo registrar? This is the government official who actually licenses and oversees these juristic persons. How do they view this interaction?
The registrar's view is entirely different and much more systemic. They aren't looking for criminal guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They are auditing the operational health of the micro-democracy. If this case file lands on the registrar's desk, they ask a completely different set of questions.
Such as,
does this condominium have a functional, documented complaint tracking system?
well, the answer is no, because the co-owner's letter was ignored for over a month with 0 acknowledgement.
Exactly. Next question. Is the common fund easily auditable by stakeholders? No, because the manager improperly uses the PDPA to block redacted receipt reviews. Is the General Assembly process democratic and transparent? No, because existential financial data is withheld until the day of the vote to force a decision.
So in the eyes of the registrar, the manager is completely failing her operational duty.
Absolutely. The registrar would view this as textbook systemic mismanagement. Now, the registrar might not send police to arrest her, but they have administrative power.
Right.
They can issue formal warnings. They can mandate external audits. Most importantly, if the co-owners organize a vote of no confidence to fire the management company, and the company tries to sue for breach of contract, the registrar's documentation of this systemic failure serves as the ultimate defense for the co-owners.
That makes total sense. And finally, the third lens, the district officer. This is the government clerk sitting behind the desk who originally told manager Gift no to the registry update because of the PDPA.
This is where we examine the role of public administration. A district officer must enforce the law strictly. There is no doubt about that. The PDPA must be respected.
Sure.
However, their fundamental overriding role is as a public servant.
Meaning they shouldn't just act as a brick wall?
Precisely. If a juristic person has a legitimate, legally mandated need to update a registry for the functioning of a community of 500 people, the officers shouldn't just say no and look at their phone.
They need to help.
Yes. They have a duty to advise the condo on how to legally navigate the friction. They should say, I cannot give this to you directly under this clause. However, if you bring me Form B, signed by the committee, or if you establish a power of attorney, we can process it under Exception Y.
They're supposed to guide the citizens, not just block them.
Exactly. When you look through the district officer lens, you see a shared failure. The government official failed their duty to guide, and the property manager failed her professional duty to ask for that guidance.
So synthesizing all of this, what is the ultimate takeaway for you, our listeners? I think it boils down to the stark difference between two concepts that the source material really dances around: passive compliance versus proactive governance.
I think that is the perfect distillation of the entire case study.
Passive compliance is exactly what Manager Gift is doing. It is doing the bare legal minimum to survive the workday. It's not actively stealing money. It's not intentionally burning the building down, but it is using the law as a shield to avoid actual work, avoid difficult communication, and avoid transparency. I can't get the data because the clerk said PDPA. I didn't answer your letter because the Condominium Act doesn't specifically say I have to reply in 7 days. I won't show you the receipts because of privacy. It is management by excuse.
And proactive governance is what the co-owner is desperately demanding. Proactive governance is recognizing the profound responsibility of managing a community's home and their money. It's about creating systems of total transparency. It's about building trust through continuous, written, detailed communication.
Yes.
It's about finding legal, creative solutions to administrative roadblocks like redacting documents or utilizing lawyers rather than just throwing your hands up in defeat.
Because living in a condo means you are part of a micro-democracy. You are not just a customer staying in a hotel. You are a citizen of that building. Your common area fees are your taxes. And the manager. The manager is your civil service.
Well said.
They work for you collectively. You have a fundamental, undeniable right to audit how they spend your money. You have a right to communicate with them and expect a professional, timely response. And you have every right to expect proactive problem solving, not just an endless stream of PDPA-related excuses.
And looking at this human failure really raises a genuinely provocative question about the future of this entire industry. We've spent this time analyzing the human element. We've seen how much good governance relies entirely on the individual proactiveness, the analytical mindset, and the ethics of a human manager.
Right. If you hire a bad human, the entire democratic system of the building breaks down.
But look at the trajectory of technology. As artificial intelligence becomes deeply integrated into property management systems, this dynamic is going to shift radically. What happens when residents start demanding automated real-time service-level agreements from an AI management platform?
Oh, wow. Think about how that changes the audit process.
Imagine a near future where you never have to beg a human for an audit again. Imagine an AI manager that automatically ingests every single maintenance receipt, instantly redacts the personal data of other owners with 100% accuracy, and publishes the clean, mathematically verified financial records to a resident dashboard in real time.
That sounds amazing.
Or imagine sending a complex, multi-page legal inquiry about data processors to the management office. And instead of being ghosted for a month, an AI instantly responds. It acknowledges receipt, provides a full, accurate legal citation of the Condominium Act, and proposes 3 actionable solutions based on the building's specific bylaws.
That would completely eradicate the passive compliance excuse. You couldn't hide behind a claim of being too busy to answer a letter.
Exactly. Will this incoming technology finally force the total unvarnished transparency that human managers sometimes try to avoid? Or, conversely, will the corporate management companies just program the AI to be even more efficient at finding legal loopholes to hide behind? It is something every single co-owner should be thinking about as we move into the next era of property management.
That is an incredible thought to end on. If a toaster breaks, you just throw it away and buy a new one. But if the engine room of your building's governance is murky, you can't just walk away. You have to wade into the administrative muddy waters, educate yourself on the laws, and demand transparency. You have to be the proactive co-owner. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Go look at your own condo management with a fresh, highly educated perspective, and never be afraid to ask for the redacted receipts.